What if the reason you feel exhausted is not because life is too hard, but because too many people have learned how to get inside your head for free? What if your anger is being rented out by strangers, your peace is being sold back to you by algorithms, and your self-respect keeps collapsing every time someone less disciplined than you decides to be loud? And what if a philosophy born 2,000 years ago can still do something most modern advice cannot? Teach you how to stand in a fake world without becoming fake yourself. Stay with me, because in this video we are not going to talk about emotions in the soft, decorative way the internet usually does. We are going to talk about power. Not power over other people. Power over the part of you that reacts too fast, trusts too easily, absorbs too much, and suffers longer than necessary. And near the end, I am going to share the mistake most people make when they think they are being calm, but are actually just becoming numb, passive, and easy to control. This is StoicCraft, where we take ancient Stoic wisdom and bring it into the pressure of modern life, work stress, digital noise, family tension, disappointment, comparison, and the hidden games people play when they sense you do not yet govern yourself. Today we are talking about emotional mastery. Not emotional suppression. Not pretending nothing hurts. Not becoming robotic. We are talking about how to remain human without being hijacked, how to feel deeply without being ruled blindly, and how to move through a manipulative culture without letting it turn your nervous system into a public doorway. We are going to move through this in a clear path. First, we will expose why so many people lose control of their inner state in the modern world. Then we will go through the core Stoic principle that separates what is happening from the story you tell yourself about what is happening. After that, we will walk through the emotions that destroy the most lives in silence: anger, fear, desire, envy, sorrow, shame, and the exhaustion that comes from constantly performing for others. And finally, we will turn all of that into something practical: how to carry yourself at work, online, in relationships, in conflict, and in the private conversations you have with yourself when nobody is watching. This is not a lecture from above. Think of it more as a long conversation with someone who knows what it means to be provoked, disappointed, overstimulated, and tired of handing emotional control to people who have not earned that kind of access. Part 1: The world profits from your reactivity. Most people think their emotional life belongs to them. It does not fully. Not until they reclaim it. Because the modern world has become very efficient at provoking you before you even have time to think. It knows exactly how to create outrage, comparison, insecurity, urgency, and false desire. It knows how to make you feel behind, overlooked, unattractive, politically threatened, professionally inferior, morally obligated, socially anxious, romantically uncertain, and never quite enough. It does this all day. Not because the world hates you personally, but because your agitation is profitable. That is the Machiavellian layer most people do not want to admit. Society does not always reward truth. It often rewards stimulation. The loudest voice wins attention. The most outrageous opinion spreads fastest. The most manipulative person in the room often gains influence before the wisest person has even finished thinking. There are entire systems built around making sure you do not pause long enough to see what is happening. And when you do not see it, you become usable. A careless comment from a coworker ruins your afternoon. One passive-aggressive text from someone you love invades your sleep. A stranger on the internet says something insulting and suddenly your mind is building court cases at midnight. A colleague gets promoted and your body interprets it as proof that you are falling behind in life. A piece of bad news hits your phone before breakfast and by 9 in the morning your nervous system already feels like it has been dragged across gravel. This is how emotional slavery works in the modern world. Nobody has to chain your body when they can repeatedly trigger your mind. Epictetus understood this long before screens existed. He warned that if someone tried to enslave your body, you would resist. Yet people surrender their minds every day. One insult. One memory. One fear. One imagined future. One person withholding approval. And the inner citadel opens its gate. That image matters. The Stoics often treated the mind as a fortress, not because life should be cold, but because not everything deserves entry. If your peace can be entered by any random voice, then your inner life is not being governed. It is being invaded. And that invasion often looks ordinary. It looks like replaying a conversation in the shower. It looks like opening your phone to check one message and losing 30 minutes to comparison. It looks like needing to win every disagreement even after the relationship has already lost. It looks like lying in bed with a tired body and a mind still arguing with people who are not even in the room. The tragedy is not that you feel. The tragedy is that your feelings are being trained by forces that do not care whether you become wiser, freer, or more stable. They only care whether you keep reacting. So the first step in emotional mastery is not a breathing exercise. It is an awakening. You have to see that your reactivity is being hunted. Not by one villain. By a culture. By habits. By insecurity. By vanity. By unprocessed hurt. By every system that benefits when you remain easy to move. And once you see that clearly, Stoicism stops sounding like a nice philosophy. It starts sounding like defense. Part 2, your emotions are not the enemy, your identification is. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that Stoicism asks you not to feel. That is not strength. That is dissociation wearing formal clothes. The Stoics did not say, become emotionless. They said, do not let judgment run wild. That is very different. Emotion is not the first betrayal. Misinterpretation is. You feel anger because something in you has decided an injustice has occurred. You feel fear because something in you has declared a threat. You feel envy because something in you has concluded that another person's success exposes your own insufficiency. You feel sorrow because something precious has been lost. Emotion arrives as a messenger. The problem begins when the messenger becomes king. Epictetus said that people are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. That line has survived for 2,000 years because it still explains almost every emotional collapse we experience. The event is one thing. The interpretation is another. The insult is one thing. The meaning you attach to the insult is another. The delay, the rejection, the criticism, the silence, the financial setback, the missed opportunity, each one hits you first as reality, then again as a story. And in many cases, the story hurts more than the event. Think about how this works in ordinary life. A friend takes longer than usual to reply. The event is a delayed message. The story becomes, they are losing respect for me, I said something wrong, I am not valued, something is off, I should pull back first. A simple delay becomes emotional weather. Your boss sends, can we talk tomorrow? The event is a meeting. The story becomes a whole nervous theater, I am in trouble, I am about to be exposed, I am failing, this is going to go badly, I need to prepare for disaster. You do not suffer tomorrow's meeting. You suffer tonight's imagination. Your partner seems distant after a long day. The event is a tired tone. The story becomes, something is wrong between us, I am being pushed away, here we go again, I always end up carrying more than I should. And because the story feels real, your body prepares as if it is real. This is why Stoicism matters so much. It inserts a boundary between sensation and identity. It teaches you to say, I notice anger rising. I notice fear building. I notice shame entering the room. But noticing is not the same as kneeling. That distinction can save entire years of your life. Because the moment you stop saying, I am angry, and start saying, anger is present, something subtle changes. You are no longer fused with the emotion. You are observing it. You are not denying it. You are just refusing to become it. That is not semantics. That is sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius trained himself this way constantly. He kept returning to the idea that the mind can preserve itself if it refuses unnecessary disturbance. Notice the word unnecessary. Some pain is real. Some grief belongs. Some fear is intelligent. But most of what ruins people is not pain itself. It is the extra layer added by ego, fantasy, wounded pride, social comparison, or the inability to sit with uncertainty without creating a catastrophe. Emotional mastery begins there. Not in domination. In separation. You are allowed to feel. You are not required to obey. Part 3, the pause is small, but it changes everything. Most lives are not destroyed in dramatic moments. They are bent out of shape by tiny reactions repeated thousands of times. The angry reply sent too quickly. The sarcastic remark that turns tension into damage. The purchase made to soothe insecurity. The late-night scroll that deepens loneliness. The defensive tone that makes a small disagreement feel like betrayal. The panicked decision made inside a temporary emotion. This is why the Stoic pause is so powerful. It looks small from the outside. It can be 3 breaths. 10 seconds. 1 walk around the block. A glass of water before you answer. A night of sleep before you decide. But in human life, that pause often marks the difference between dignity and regret. Seneca warned that the mind must be trained against its first impulse. That sentence should be taken seriously. Because the first impulse is rarely wise. It is fast, proud, scared, wounded, territorial, and eager to protect whatever identity feels threatened in that moment. When you are insulted, the first impulse wants revenge. When you are afraid, the first impulse wants escape. When you are ashamed, the first impulse wants to hide or attack. When you are desired, the first impulse wants indulgence. When you feel ignored, the first impulse wants proof that you still matter. The first impulse is not evil. It is just ancient. It is trying to keep you alive using old tools. But modern life constantly triggers survival reactions in situations that do not actually require war. A difficult email is not a tiger. A disagreement is not annihilation. Being misunderstood is painful, but it is not death. Not getting chosen is disappointing, but it is not proof that you are nothing. And yet the body often does not know that at first. The chest tightens. The jaw sets. The breath shortens. The mind narrows. This is why emotional mastery is not merely philosophical. It is physiological. Sometimes the most stoic thing you can do is notice your body before you trust your thoughts. Slow the breath and the mind becomes less crowded. Relax the jaw and the urge to attack weakens. Delay the response and the imagination loses momentum. Name the feeling and its mystery starts to shrink. This sounds simple, and it is. But simple is not the same as easy. Especially in a culture that teaches immediate reaction as proof of authenticity. People now confuse impulsiveness with honesty. They say, I just say what I feel, as if lack of discipline is a virtue. But a person who vents every raw impulse is not more real. They are simply less governed. The pause restores governance. You see this clearly in professional life. The person who can hold their center in a tense meeting often gains more respect than the most verbally dominant person in the room. The employee who does not rush to defend every small criticism appears stronger, not weaker. The leader who can absorb pressure without infecting everyone else with panic becomes someone people trust. Calm is contagious, but only when it is earned. The same is true in relationships. Many arguments do not become painful because of the original issue. They become painful because two nervous systems react faster than two mature minds can think. One sentence lands badly. Another sentence lands harder. Then pride enters. Then memory enters. Then older wounds join the conversation. Then nobody is discussing the present anymore. They are defending identity. The pause interrupts that avalanche. Sometimes you will still need to speak. Sometimes boundaries must be clear. Sometimes wrong is wrong. Stoicism is not passivity. But the pause makes sure your response comes from principle rather than emotional spillage. And that one shift, from reaction to response, is where self-respect starts to feel different in the body. Part 4. Anger feels powerful because it borrows the language of justice. Of all the emotions that ruin judgment, anger is one of the most seductive. Fear at least feels vulnerable. Sorrow feels heavy. Envy feels embarrassing. But anger often arrives dressed like strength. That is why people trust it too quickly. Anger tells you that you are seeing clearly, when in fact you are usually seeing narrowly. It tells you that your intensity is proof of moral seriousness. It tells you that if you do not react now, you are weak. It whispers that restraint is cowardice, that escalation is honesty, that punishment is clarity. This is why so many people make permanent mistakes in temporary fury. A father says something to his son that the child remembers for 20 years. A woman sends a message during heartbreak that closes a door she later wishes had stayed open. A manager humiliates an employee in front of others because his own stress finally spills over. A man destroys his reputation in one meeting because he mistakes force for control. A marriage accumulates damage not from one great betrayal, but from 10,000 sharp moments never brought under discipline. Seneca wrote an entire work on anger because he understood how destructive it is. He treated anger not as strength but as a form of temporary madness. And if that sounds too extreme, think about the last time anger fully took over. Think about how it reduced your perception. Think about how creative it became in justifying itself. Think about how quickly it recruited the past, exaggerated the present, and tried to author a future based on one emotional storm. Anger is dangerous because it often contains a grain of truth. Sometimes you were disrespected. Sometimes you were used. Sometimes a line really was crossed. Stoicism does not ask you to deny that. What it asks is whether anger is the best instrument for handling it. Usually it is not. Because anger wants immediate discharge, not accurate action. It wants the relief of expression, not the discipline of consequence. It wants to make the other person feel what you feel, even if that means you become less like yourself in the process. Marcus Aurelius gave one of the sharpest answers to this: the best revenge is not to become like the one who harmed you. That line matters more now than ever, because modern culture often rewards imitation. Someone becomes rude, so you become colder. Someone becomes manipulative, so you become harder. Someone humiliates you, so you fantasize about humiliating them more elegantly. The wounded ego loves symmetry. But not every symmetry is noble. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is remain so governed that the other person never gets to decide your inner climate. That does not mean you tolerate abuse. It means you respond from a higher position than the one they tried to drag you into. Here is what that looks like in real life. At work, a colleague speaks over you in a meeting. Anger says interrupt harder, expose them, make them feel small. Discipline says note the pattern, respond with precision, choose the setting that gives your words weight, and do not let their lack of composure recruit yours. In family life, someone uses the same old tone that has always triggered you. Anger says prove you are not the weaker one anymore. Discipline says recognize the old wound, refuse the old script, and choose the adult response even if the child in you wants to fight. Online, someone misrepresents what you said. Anger says spend your night correcting strangers. Discipline says ask a brutal question, does this deserve my life force? Anger is not always loud. Sometimes it is silent contempt. Sometimes it is an icy withdrawal meant to make someone suffer. Sometimes it is a fantasy of future superiority. But whether it burns hot or cold, it still tries to place emotion in command. The Stoic method is to catch anger early, in the jaw, in the pulse, in the imagined speech, in the instant desire to strike back. Catch it before it writes your next line. Because once anger speaks through your mouth, it often leaves you with cleanup that calm would never have created. Part 5, Fear makes the world look smaller than it is. Fear rarely enters like a movie scene. Most of the time it arrives quietly. It sounds reasonable. It disguises itself as caution, realism, responsibility, prudence. And because it sounds intelligent, people often do not notice how much of their life it has already stolen. Fear tells you not to speak because you might be judged. Not to begin because you might fail. Not to leave because uncertainty is dangerous. Not to love fully because loss is coming. Not to change because the known pain feels safer than the unknown possibility. This is one of the saddest ways a person becomes emotionally trapped. They are not always broken by disaster. Sometimes they are slowly reduced by anticipation. The Stoics confronted fear by exposing the lie beneath it, the assumption that comfort equals safety and discomfort equals danger. It does not. Some comfortable lives are spiritually shrinking people by the day. Some difficult seasons are strengthening people in ways ease never could. When the Stoics practiced voluntary hardship, cold, hunger, simplicity, discomfort, solitude, they were not playing games. They were training perception. They were teaching the body and mind, I can endure more than panic says I can. That lesson is priceless now. Because fear today is often psychological before it is physical. It is fear of embarrassment, fear of irrelevance, fear of being seen, fear of being ordinary, fear of missing out, fear of being left, fear of losing status, fear of making the wrong move in front of people who are themselves barely holding it together. Look at how much modern anxiety is built on this kind of pressure. A man hates his job but stays because uncertainty feels unbearable. A woman knows a relationship is draining her dignity but keeps negotiating with it because the thought of beginning again feels too heavy. A creative person postpones their real work for years because the fantasy of future perfection protects them from present exposure. None of these are failures of intelligence. They are failures of relationship to fear. Stoicism asks a different question. What if the thing you fear is not the event itself, but the emotion you imagine feeling inside it? That changes everything. Because if you can survive the inner feeling, then the outer event loses much of its tyranny. Rejection hurts, yes. But can you survive being rejected? You already have. Loss hurts, yes. But can you survive grief? Human beings do, even when they did not think they could. Uncertainty hurts, yes. But can you survive not knowing for a while? That is already most of life. Fear grows in vagueness. It weakens in contact. That is why courageous people do not always feel less fear. They just stop treating fear as final authority. The practical application is simple, though not easy. Narrow your focus. Return to what is in front of you. Instead of solving your entire future tonight, make the next clean move. Instead of asking, "What if everything collapses?" ask, "What is required of me today?" Instead of waiting to feel ready, train yourself to act with a shaking hand if necessary. Marcus Aurelius kept bringing himself back to this kind of immediacy. Do what is in front of you. The next right thing. The honest task. The disciplined act. Fear wants to drag you into imaginary futures because that is where it feels largest. Action brings you back into reality, where fear can be handled in pieces. And once you start doing that, something remarkable happens. Your confidence becomes less theatrical and more grounded. You stop needing to feel invincible. It is enough to know you can endure. That kind of confidence is quiet. But it does not break easily. Part 6. Desire becomes slavery when it decides who you are. Not all emotional suffering comes from pain. Some of it comes from wanting too much from things that were never designed to carry your identity. Status. Praise. Attraction. Success. Luxury. Recognition. Validation. Winning. Being admired by people you do not even truly respect. Desire becomes dangerous not because wanting is evil, but because wanting can become worship. And whatever you worship gains the power to destabilize you. The Stoics were not anti-pleasure. They were anti-dependence. They understood that a person who needs outer reward in order to remain inwardly stable is not free. They are emotionally outsourced. This matters deeply in a culture where desire is constantly engineered. You are shown what to want before you have decided what matters. A better body. A more impressive life. A certain image of success. A certain kind of relationship. A certain pace of achievement. A certain aesthetic. A certain level of public affirmation. Then, once desire has been planted, the emotional machinery begins. Restlessness. Comparison. Compulsion. Self-doubt. Vanity. Overwork. Burnout. Secret resentment toward anyone who seems to have reached what you still crave. Again, the world rarely says, "Become wise." It more often says, "Become visible." But visibility is not the same as value. A man can build an entire career trying to prove he is significant and still feel empty in private. A woman can curate a beautiful life that earns admiration from others while feeling internally exhausted by the maintenance of it. A high achiever can reach every external milestone and still live with the quiet terror that if they stop producing, their worth will evaporate. This is the emotional cost of desire without examination. Stoicism asks hard questions here. Does this desire serve my purpose, or is it feeding my vanity? Would I still want this if nobody could see it? Am I pursuing this because it is meaningful, or because it makes me legible in the eyes of others? If I do not get it, do I lose direction, or do I lose identity? Those questions expose a lot. Because often the thing you think you want is not the thing itself. It is the emotional promise attached to it. If I get this, I will finally feel safe. Chosen. Respected. Superior. Secure. Enough. That is why desire can become one of the most hidden forms of emotional weakness. It looks ambitious from a distance. But inside, it may just be insecurity in expensive clothing. The Stoic answer is not to kill ambition. It is to subordinate ambition to principle. Work hard, build well, enjoy beauty, pursue excellence, but never hand your nervous system over to the outcome. Let success be welcome, not required for your sense of self. This makes you strangely powerful. When you can enjoy without clinging, you become hard to manipulate. When you can achieve without worshipping the result, you become harder to exhaust. When you can appreciate status without needing it to confirm your worth, you stop bending your character to impress the unstable crowd. And in relationships, this changes everything too. Desire often distorts love by turning people into emotional supply. Instead of seeing the other person clearly, you start needing them to regulate your self-esteem. Then every delay feels like disrespect, every mood change feels like rejection, every disagreement feels like danger. You are no longer loving. You are bargaining for reassurance. The more emotionally dependent the desire, the more fragile the bond. Stoicism cleans this up by returning you to yourself. Love fully, but do not abandon inner proportion. Want deeply, but do not kneel. Enjoy, but do not chain your peace to anything outside your character. That is not coldness. It is clean love. Part 7, Envy, Comparison, and the Digital War Against Contentment. Few things corrode emotional stability as quietly as comparison. You can be grateful at 8 in the morning and feel deficient by 8:15 because someone else's life passed across a screen in a way that made yours feel suddenly smaller. That is not accidental. Digital life has turned comparison into a daily environment. You are no longer just living your life. You are living beside a non-stop exhibition of everyone else's curated moments, filtered success, edited beauty, performative certainty, and strategic vulnerability. No ancient Stoic had to wake up and compare his body, income, marriage, discipline, attractiveness, and relevance to 1,000 people before coffee. But if Marcus Aurelius were alive now, he would immediately recognize the danger. Not because technology itself is evil, but because an unguarded mind will absorb whatever it repeatedly stares at. And repeated comparison creates emotional distortion. Envy often does not present itself honestly. It comes disguised as inspiration, curiosity, or critique. You say, "I'm just observing." But if your peace keeps shrinking afterward, something deeper is happening. Envy says, "Why not me? What am I missing? I should be further ahead. Their life looks easier. Maybe I made the wrong choices. Maybe I'm too late. Maybe I've already wasted too much time." Now pause and notice what comparison is really doing. It is not merely showing you another person. It is altering your relationship with yourself. That is why it is so dangerous. A person can be making meaningful progress in silence, but 1 hour of comparison can make them feel like a failure. A couple can have a decent, real relationship, but constant exposure to idealized intimacy online can make ordinary love feel insufficient. A parent can be doing their sincere best, but comparison to polished family images can inject shame where reality only required patience. A professional can be building something solid over time, but comparison to louder success can create panic that leads to reckless decisions. Comparison is rarely neutral. It either inflames desire, diminishes gratitude, or pressures you into imitation. The Stoic response is not denial. It is reorientation. First, remember that what you see is never the whole. You are comparing your interior to someone else's exterior. That is always an unfair contest. Second, return to what is yours to build. Other people's timelines are not your assignments. Other people's visibility is not your measurement. Other people's applause does not add or subtract from the quality of your character. Third, learn to protect your attention like it matters, because it does. Every swipe is not just content consumption. It is emotional conditioning. It is training your sense of what matters, what is missing, what is urgent, what is desirable, what counts as enough. That means digital detachment is not optional if you want emotional mastery. It is part of the practice now. This may look like limiting exposure. It may mean removing certain voices from your environment. It may mean refusing to start the day with a machine that immediately tells you who is winning, who is hotter, who is richer, who is louder, who is more celebrated, who is more desired. A calm mind in the digital age has to be defended deliberately. And here is the deeper truth: the more grounded you become, the less fascinated you are by spectacle. You begin to see that much of what people display is not proof of peace. It is proof of performance. Sometimes the loudest display of certainty is covering the deepest insecurity. Sometimes the most admired image is attached to a life that feels fractured in private. Sometimes the people provoking envy are themselves emotionally starving. When you understand that, comparison starts to lose its seduction. You stop asking, "How do I keep up?" and start asking, "What kind of life would let me remain inwardly whole?" That question leads somewhere much better. Part 8, Sorrow, Loss, and the difference between feeling pain and becoming pain. Some emotions are loud and fiery. Sorrow is different. It can flatten a room without making a sound. And this is where Stoicism is often misunderstood most unfairly. People assume it has no room for grief because it values composure. But composure is not the absence of heartbreak. It is the refusal to let heartbreak erase your relationship to truth. Loss hurts because attachment was real. That is not weakness. It is evidence that something mattered. The Stoics knew this. What they resisted was not grief itself, but the second collapse that comes when grief convinces you life is now unlivable, meaningless, or permanently ruined. That distinction matters deeply if you have ever lost a person, a dream, a season of life, a version of yourself, or even an illusion you once depended on. There are many forms of sorrow. The death that changes the atmosphere of a family forever. The divorce no one expected to become final. The career path you gave years to, only to watch it close. The relationship that did not end in betrayal, only in painful incompatibility. The child leaving home and taking a whole era with them. The realization that your parents are aging. The discovery that the life you built around pleasing others left you far from yourself. These losses do not need philosophy that speaks down to them. They need philosophy strong enough to sit beside them without lying. Stoicism, at its best, does that. It says, yes, this hurts. Yes, the wound is real. Yes, tears belong here. Yes, the world may feel altered for a while. But it also says, do not add falsehood to pain. Do not say this should never have happened, when loss is part of every human story. Do not say you cannot survive this, when human beings have carried unbearable things and still remained capable of love. Do not say life is over because a chapter ended. Do not demand that reality reverse itself just because your heart is not ready. Acceptance is not emotional surrender. It is the end of useless argument with what has already occurred. And that is where healing begins. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on change, decay, impermanence, not to depress himself, but to live without fantasy. Everything borrowed from life returns to life. Knowing that does not make you cold. It makes you more reverent, more awake, more able to love without pretending you can freeze time. In a strange way, that perspective can make sorrow cleaner. You stop fighting the existence of pain itself and begin carrying it with more dignity. You allow grief to move without turning it into identity. You remember the person, the season, the love, the dream, but you do not build a permanent home inside the wound. The practical side of this is often quiet. Keep a rhythm. Eat. Walk. Breathe. Stay close to what is simple and real. Do not make life decisions from the deepest point of emotional flooding. Let trusted people sit near you if they are capable of genuine presence. Journal the truth instead of the performance. Let the body cry if it needs to. But keep returning, in small ways, to the structure of life. Because sorrow wants to tell you that because something precious ended, everything meaningful ended with it. That is almost never true. The Stoic does not deny grief. They protect the grieving person from disappearing inside it. Part 9, Other people's behavior reveals them, your response reveals you. One of the most liberating Stoic insights is that other people's behavior belongs, first of all, to them. Their pettiness, their insecurity, their dishonesty, their inconsistency, their need for attention, their manipulation, their cowardice, their vanity, these are revelations of their current condition. Not necessarily of your value. But emotionally immature people rarely stop there. They turn another person's behavior into self-definition. Someone withdraws and they conclude, I am too much. Someone lies and they conclude, I was foolish. Someone cheats and they conclude, I was not enough. Someone disrespects them and they conclude, I must prove my worth immediately. This is how one person's lack of integrity becomes another person's identity crisis. Stoicism breaks that chain. It teaches you to observe human behavior without instantly personalizing all of it. That does not mean becoming naive. In fact, this is where the Machiavellian layer becomes useful in a sober way. Not paranoid. Sober. See people clearly. Some people provoke because chaos gives them leverage. Some people withhold because ambiguity gives them control. Some people flatter because access is their real goal. Some people play victim because it lets them avoid responsibility. Some people test your boundaries not because they are confused, but because they are measuring how much of yourself you are willing to surrender for peace. If you refuse to see this, you will keep calling manipulation, miscommunication, and disrespect complexity. You will keep explaining away patterns that are already teaching you something. Emotional mastery requires compassion, yes, but it also requires discernment. That means you can understand someone's wounds without offering your nervous system as a place for them to rehearse them. You can forgive without reconnecting. You can stay dignified without staying available. You can recognize that another person is struggling and still decide that their struggle does not grant them permanent access to your peace. This is especially important in relationships where emotional confusion becomes chronic. Some people live in cycles: closeness, withdrawal, apology, intensity, distance, repair, repeat. And every time, the emotionally undisciplined person gets pulled back in by hope, chemistry, guilt, memory, or the fantasy that understanding the other person more deeply will finally stabilize the situation. Often it does not. Sometimes the most stoic act is not to decode someone forever. It is to believe the pattern. And in work, this matters too. Offices are filled with subtle emotional games, the strategic omission, the public charm paired with private undermining, the colleague who needs to remain vague so responsibility never sticks, the superior who confuses intimidation with leadership. If you are overly reactive, these people can pull you apart. If you are overly naive, they can use your sincerity as convenience. But if you are calm and observant, something changes. You stop rushing to defend yourself emotionally. You gather facts. You speak less, but with more force. You stop narrating every discomfort as injury. You stop giving away tells. You let patterns reveal themselves before you decide how close, how open, how trusting, or how available you should be. That is not cruelty. That is maturity. Other people are allowed to be what they are. You are not required to abandon your center while finding out. Part 10. The private conversation in your mind becomes your emotional climate. How you speak to yourself in private matters more than most people realize. Because public composure can be faked for a while. You can look calm in a room and still be chaotic inside. You can appear disciplined to others while privately rehearsing resentment, shame, fear, and self-contempt all day. The Stoics cared deeply about the inner voice because they understood something modern life keeps proving: the quality of your private interpretation becomes the atmosphere of your existence. If your mind constantly says, "I'm behind. I always ruin things. Nobody respects me. I should be further by now. I can't handle this. This always happens to me. I need them to approve of me. I will never recover from this." Then even good circumstances will struggle to feel good for long. Your inner narration will contaminate them. This is where emotional mastery becomes deeply personal. Not performative. Personal. You have to start noticing what tone lives in your own head. Is it cruel? Is it panicked? Is it dramatic? Is it addicted to extremes? Does it turn every mistake into identity? Does it keep you psychologically bowed, even when no one else is pressing on you anymore? Many adults are still being ruled by voices they absorbed years ago: critical parents, humiliating teachers, dismissive partners, social environments where love had to be earned through performance. Those voices become internalized. And later, when life gets hard, the person thinks their suffering is coming only from the present. Often it is also coming from an old language still living inside them. Stoicism does not fix that by replacing it with shallow positivity. It does something stronger. It introduces honest, steady, disciplined speech. Not, "Everything is amazing," but, "This is hard, and I can meet it." Not, "I am never affected," but, "I am affected, and I do not need to collapse." Not, "They ruined me," but, "They hurt me, and what happens next still belongs to me." Not, "I must be perfect," but, "I must remain honest, disciplined, and willing to continue." That voice matters because it becomes your emotional companion in every difficult season. A person with a harsh inner voice needs very little external pressure to feel defeated. A person with a disciplined inner voice can go through astonishing difficulty without becoming internally abandoned. This is why journaling was so central to many Stoics. Marcus Aurelius was not writing for applause. He was correcting the mind in private. He was reteaching himself how to see. You can do the same. At the end of a hard day, do not merely replay events. Reframe them. What actually happened? What part was in my control? Where did I react too quickly? What belief created most of the emotional pain? What would a more governed response look like next time? What did I do well, even if imperfectly? Questions like these turn pain into training. Without reflection, emotions repeat themselves. With reflection, they become instruction. And once that starts happening, your self-respect becomes less dependent on whether the outside world was kind to you that day. It starts growing from the fact that you know how to stand by yourself internally. That is a form of wealth no unstable environment can easily take away. Part 11. Discipline is not just a habit, it is emotional armor. People often treat discipline as a productivity topic. Wake up early. Stay consistent. Hit the goal. Finish the task. That is part of it, but it misses something deeper. Discipline is emotional architecture. A disciplined life reduces the number of moments in which chaos gets to decide who you are. When sleep is poor, emotional control weakens. When the body is neglected, irritation rises faster. When attention is scattered all day, inward silence becomes harder to access. When routines disappear, the mind becomes easier to destabilize. When every day is improvised, every emotion has more room to become a steering wheel. This is why Stoicism was never just a set of ideas. It was practice. The body matters. Rest matters. Food matters. Movement matters. Order matters. Daily structure matters. What you repeatedly consume matters. What you repeatedly tolerate matters. A man who sleeps badly, doomscrolls at midnight, avoids difficult conversations, numbs his stress with distraction, and then wonders why his emotional life feels fragile is not facing a mystery. He is facing consequences. A woman who constantly overextends herself, never rests without guilt, remains available to everyone, never protects her own attention, and then feels resentful and emotionally flooded is not broken. She is depleted and underdefended. The Stoic answer here is not self-punishment. It is self-command. Train the body a little. Keep promises to yourself. Reduce avoidable chaos. Create rhythms that support clarity. Do not wait until you feel inspired to act. Build a life that helps your nervous system stay less vulnerable to unnecessary disturbance. This may sound unromantic compared with big philosophical language, but it is where a lot of freedom actually comes from. A strong morning routine will not solve grief. A walk will not erase betrayal. Better sleep will not heal every wound. But these things make you less easily overrun. And that matters. Because a large part of emotional mastery is reducing friction before the moment of testing arrives. If you wait until you are already triggered to invent discipline, you are late. The preparation has to exist beforehand. This is why small acts of restraint matter so much. Not checking your phone immediately. Sitting with discomfort a little longer. Finishing what you said you would finish. Leaving a conversation when it turns degrading instead of staying to be dragged deeper. Choosing silence over impulsive explanation. Going to bed instead of feeding the spiral. Returning to the task instead of escaping into stimulation. Each act seems minor. But each one teaches the same lesson. I do not need every urge to become an action. That lesson becomes armor. And over time, people can feel it around you. Not because you become stiff or superior, but because you stop leaking so much volatility. Your presence becomes steadier. Your words become more measured. Your energy feels less desperate, less approval hungry, less easy to knock off course. That kind of steadiness is rare now. Which is why it feels powerful. Part 12, Real strength is not emotional numbness. Now let's come back to the mistake I mentioned near the beginning. The mistake people make when they think they are becoming calm. They confuse peace with shutdown. This happens all the time. Someone gets hurt too many times, so they stop expressing anything and call it stoicism. Someone gets tired of being disappointed, so they become detached from everyone and call it strength. Someone grows weary of conflict, so they suppress every real feeling until they no longer know what they actually need, then call that maturity. But numbness is not mastery. Avoidance is not peace. Emotional flatness is not wisdom. It is possible to be unbothered because you are deep. It is also possible to be unbothered because you are disconnected. And those are not the same. Real Stoic strength leaves you more present, not less. More accurate, not more frozen. More compassionate, not more passive. More capable of boundaries, not less capable of closeness. A truly governed person can feel the sting of disrespect and still choose a clean response. They can love without becoming dependent. They can grieve without becoming lost. They can care deeply without needing control over every outcome. They can enter conflict without letting conflict enter their identity. They can walk away without theatrics. They can stay without self-betrayal. That is very different from the person who has simply shut down. So ask yourself honestly, am I calm, or am I exhausted? Am I detached, or am I afraid to be disappointed again? Am I composed, or have I just become emotionally unavailable? Am I wise, or have I turned self-protection into a prison? Those questions matter because some people build an entire personality around never being affected, when underneath that pose is unresolved pain still controlling the whole structure. Stoicism does not ask you to become untouchable in the childish sense. It asks you to become internally ordered enough that pain no longer gets unlimited authority over your choices. That means your humanity remains intact. You still laugh. You still love. You still care. You still feel awe, tenderness, grief, attraction, disappointment, affection, anger, concern, excitement. But now those emotions move through a stronger container. That container is character. And character is what allows emotion to become depth instead of chaos. Part 13, How this looks in everyday modern life. Let's make all of this very practical. What does emotional mastery actually look like on an ordinary Tuesday? It looks like waking up and not handing your mind to your phone before you have handed it to yourself. It looks like noticing bad news without letting it colonize the whole day. It looks like going to work and hearing tension in someone's voice without immediately absorbing it as your burden. It looks like receiving criticism and asking what is useful instead of building an identity crisis around it. It looks like being attracted to approval and still refusing to betray your standards to get it. It looks like having an argument with someone you love and caring more about truth and repair than about winning the moment. It looks like letting people misunderstand you a little when endless self-explanation would cost too much dignity. It looks like feeling the urge to text, post, defend, prove, explain, or retaliate, and choosing not to obey immediately. It looks like ending the day by asking not whether the world was fair, but whether you remained aligned. That last question is especially important. Because many people define a good day as a day when nothing unpleasant happened. Stoicism defines a good day differently, a day in which you remained under your own command, even while life was imperfect. That is a much more stable standard. Here are a few examples. You get ignored in a meeting. The old you spends the whole afternoon replaying it. The governed you notices the sting, evaluates the context, adjusts strategy if needed, and refuses to let one moment determine your worth. Your ex posts something that seems designed to provoke. The old you spirals. The governed you sees the hook and declines it. A parent or sibling says something that used to send you back into your younger self. The old you reacts from old pain. The governed you feels the old pain, but answers from present maturity. You make a mistake at work. The old you turns it into self-condemnation. The governed you corrects it, learns from it, and keeps perspective. You feel loneliness at night. The old you rushes toward distraction, validation, or people who cost too much afterward. The governed you lets the feeling be felt without turning it into self-betrayal. This is what mastery looks like. Not perfection. Not invulnerability. Repeated returns to center. And yes, some days you will fail. You will speak too fast, trust too quickly, overreact, overthink, compare, cling, withdraw, or collapse into an old pattern. That does not mean the philosophy failed. It means training is still needed. Even Marcus Aurelius had to keep reminding himself. That is why he wrote so much to himself. Because discipline is not a one-time awakening. It is maintenance. You do not master emotion once. You become the kind of person who keeps returning to mastery. Part 14, Why This Matters Now More Than Ever. There was always a need for self-command. But our time has intensified the stakes. We live in an age of permanent stimulation. Permanent comparison. Permanent access. Permanent commentary. Permanent invitation to perform. Permanent pressure to react, announce, choose sides, signal value, defend image, monitor relevance, and prove that you are not being left behind. In that environment, emotional discipline is not a niche virtue. It is protection for the soul. Without it, people become fragmented. Their attention is owned by the loudest voice. Their mood is controlled by the latest update. Their self-worth rises and falls according to feedback from unstable systems. Their relationships become arenas of projection. Their work becomes identity. Their pain becomes performance. Their desires become instructions. Their triggers become public policy. With discipline, something else becomes possible. Inner spaciousness. Clearer judgment. More selective attention. Less need to perform. More resilience in conflict. More dignity under pressure. More freedom from the emotional economy that keeps most people in invisible debt. And that freedom changes how you move through the world. You become harder to bait. Harder to seduce with vanity. Harder to control through fear. Harder to use through guilt. Harder to destabilize through opinion. Harder to shame into self-betrayal. Not because you are heartless. Because you are anchored. That is the real promise of Stoicism. It does not promise a painless life. It promises that pain no longer has to make you small. It does not promise that people will stop being manipulative, shallow, loud, dishonest, or selfish. It promises that you do not have to become internally chaotic just because the world remains externally chaotic. And for many people listening right now, that may be the hope they most need. Not a fantasy that life gets easier. A deeper confidence that you can become steadier. So let's bring this together. Your emotions are not your enemy, but they cannot be allowed to rule you. The world profits from your reactivity, which means emotional discipline is now an act of defense. The Stoic pause creates the space where freedom enters. Anger borrows the language of justice, but rarely gives you the clarity it promises. Fear shrinks life by making imagined pain feel bigger than lived reality. Desire becomes slavery when your identity depends on outcomes, status, or approval. Comparison in the digital age is a daily assault on contentment, which means attention must be guarded. Sorrow deserves respect, but not the right to erase your future. Other people's behavior reveals their condition, your response reveals your character. Your private inner voice becomes the emotional climate in which you live. Discipline is not just about productivity, it is emotional armor. And real strength is not numbness. It is ordered feeling inside a stable character. If there is one sentence to carry from all of this, let it be this. You do not need to control every event in your life. You need to stop surrendering your inner state to every event in your life. That is where peace begins. That is where dignity returns. That is where self-respect stops being a slogan and starts becoming a way of walking through the world. If this spoke to something real in you, stay with this work. Not because ancient philosophy is trendy, but because modern life keeps proving how badly we need it. Write in the comments, which emotion is hardest for you to master right now: anger, fear, envy, overthinking, desire, or something else entirely. And more importantly, where do you feel it taking control first? In your thoughts, your body, your habits, or your relationships? If this video helped you see your inner life more clearly, subscribe to StoicCraft and keep walking with us. There is a kind of strength the world does not know how to market because it cannot be easily sold: quiet strength, clean discernment, emotional discipline, and the power of a mind that does not open its gates to every passing force. Hold on to that. Because the person who cannot be easily provoked cannot be easily controlled. And the person who learns to govern themselves has already begun to outgrow the fake world trying to govern them.